Welcome, comic enthusiasts, to another IGH Comic Contest Fiesta and Taco Special. Today's video entry is for The Rock, the cornerstone, the myth, the man behind JLS Comics, Jesse. Jesse leads what, in my opinion, is the best weekly comic news and discussion group show every Thursday. It's entitled JLS Comic Conversation, or as my friend Justin refers to it, Thursday Comic Conversation. Either way, JLS has done an outstanding job acting as one of the great comic news heralds in our YouTube community, and is a great steward of bringing fellow comic enthusiasts into the fold. He's recently reached the well-deserved 2,000 subscriber mark, which in my mind only is the beginning of his rise to popularity and what will become a mass of cult following. But because he has hit this 2K subscriber mark, Jesse has given us a great opportunity to enter a contest and win some free eBay money, which in turn will buy more awesome comics. The rules to enter are simple. They are: be 18 years or older, be subscribed to his channel, the link for which I will provide in the description below, post your video entry link in his contest, discussion panel, and lastly, tell a story. Show us some art. Give us a reason why you love comics. Let us know why this is a hobby which you love. So, why do I love comics? Why does it give me a great joy to read comics? Well, honestly, I love comics because they gave me a great escape as a kid. They were my first real playtime fantasy. I grew up in the 80s, and I was really introduced and fell in love with the X-Men cartoons. Not the original team, but the one introduced by giant-sized X-Men, number 1. Wolverine, Storm, Nightcrawler, those guys. Wolverine particularly really fascinated me. And I would be caught a lot of times holding pencils in my hand when I was younger, pretending to make snink noises. And I grew up in a small town, southeast Alaska, and in that town we had a very small toy and comic store. And it was here where I was introduced to comics by my dad. He would go in there and they would sell other things such as football and baseball cards, which he collected, and he would buy me a comic so I would have some time to read while he sorted through the cards in which he was collecting. And I don't remember the name of the store, but I do know that it was right after the Death of Superman comic that the store began to go out of business. Now, I don't think it was due to that comic. It was more due to the fact that I was in a town of 1,500 people, and that was way too small to support a hobby industry store like a comic store. So the owner eventually closed up and moved his family away. And it wasn't until about 1995 that my town started having comics again, when a local grocery store, one of two, started to begin a trial run in which they saw, would this be popular for us to carry or not? And it was at that time I began really excited. Like I said, it was 95, and the first issue I was able to buy with my own money, where my dad didn't buy it for me, was X-Men Alpha number 1, basically the Age of Apocalypse stuff, the Chromium cover. And I remember being super excited to read that comic. Storm had her new haircut for the first time. Wolverine had one hand. What was going on? The cover was crazy. And that was a story that got me back into it. But it was shortly after, just a few months in fact, that they said it wasn't profitable and they stopped carrying them. So once again, I was left in a small Alaskan town with no comics. And it was here I just started doing stuff, going to high school, playing sports. I did anything but comic-related stuff. I went on to college, so I moved down to Arizona and Phoenix. And I met my wife, and we ended up getting married and moving away. And it was her that really engaged me to want to restart passions, and she encouraged that. And so I began collecting again, trying to read again. And I started off with the all-new X-Men series. And I didn't like it. I couldn't get into it. It was a little too political for me. I couldn't connect to some of the characters. Everything seemed foreign. I just didn't enjoy it as much as I once did. It was shortly after that, in 2012, when a friend of mine surprised me as I overheard him saying in the workplace that he liked comics. And this, of course, led us to begin talking. And I told him the issues I had with getting back into comics. And He suggested that I take a look into some reviews in a new comic book series called Saga. And it was by a publisher I wasn't very familiar with. I knew they did some stories that as a kid I wasn't able to read, and that was Image. So I bought the first issue and I gave it a read, and for some reason I couldn't put it down. It was a little more mature than I was used to, and it was a little more socially relevant, but I was fascinated nevertheless. So I bought more issues, and I began reading about these sophisticated characters, such as a winged woman named Alana, her husband named Marco, and Marco had sheep horns. Sheep horns, I joke, I kid you not. There were other odd and enthralling characters. I remember there was a seal guy named Gus, there was a ghost babysitter named Isabel, a spider woman and mercenary named Stock, her boyfriend who was also a mercenary named the Will, and his lion cat who, no joke, tells when people are lying. There was a Cyclops romance novelist and a robot prince. I kid you not, these characters seemed crazy. Too crazy to work. But for some reason, some crazier reason than I could anticipate, it did. It was at that time when I wasn't connecting to one of my all-time favorite franchises that I found this out-of-nowhere comic. It really hit the mark and drew me back into the industry. I felt a connection with the story, as I was a young man who was in an interracial marriage trying to figure out how to secure his future for not just himself but for his family. And I found it funny that when I was researching on what Brian K. Vaughan did to make the book and why he took a risk in an industry that was on the downturn, he said, I realized that making comics and making babies were kind of the same thing, and that if I combined the two with a crazy sci-fi fantasy universe, I knew it would succeed. And it's a philosophy that I see in the comic that he writes, and it kind of hit, like I said, hit the mark with me at that time with a lot of uncertainty. And he was right, because Saga took off, and at its core, it's just a love story about a family who's just trying to make it through life, through tough times. And that's something I think most of us could relate to. Well, that concludes my story for this contest about why I love comics. I just wanted to say again that in my honest opinion, there's so many good individual YouTube legends who do live streams and auctions, but only Jesse brings together a weekly panel of experts who give wanted and needed comic news and opinions, which I find invaluable, especially those who may be, as I said earlier, new to the community. Not everybody can discuss superheroes with their friends around the water cooler, so let JLS entertain and enthrall you with news and upcoming movies, TV shows, toys, conventions, writers, speculation, book reviews, interviews, with industry pioneers. JLS, it's an all-stop comic conversation that happens every Thursday. The link again is below, so please subscribe, like, and follow this great content creator. IGH Comics, signing out.